Before this game got started, I jokingly said that the gatekeeping in this game will be way higher than a game like Lost Ark and stuff like that, which doesn't make sense because it is a casual game. But the issues with the fundamental of the game is that there's too many ways to inflate your gear score for free. At this point, you must have realized that the album is a completely useless system that just pad your gear score by 1000 to 1500 versus someone who didn't farm it. Because this thing doesn't work in like Bolt, this thing doesn't work in like Ray, it doesn't work unless you're fighting against void monsters, which is not the main purpose of the content. To be quite honest, I expected this to be a bigger issue when this game launched in West, just because this typically is how the West go. Just going into world chat right now, you have people like asking for tank and healer for 19k on tower floor 35, not even tower floor 40 or 35, and your healer and your tank, which doesn't do damage anyway, in 19k. Like, this is kind of a lot and absurd. And the same goes with something else. I'm personally a fully free-to-play player on Blue Protocol Star Resonance, and at the current moment, I have 18k gear scores, mostly because I'm prioritizing pushing for things that actually matter and increase my DPS in the long run, like the fact that the Muku Chef in here. Now, to be quite honest, the only reason why I hit 18k is because I was able to complete all the content in this game already and get my 4P set. I did the level 40 volts easily, I did the Dark Dragon Ray easily with people in 15k range and stuff like that, and this puts me to 18k with the 4P set, right? And so this is the problem because people who are trying to clear the Ray probably don't have 4P set because the Ray is what gives them the 4P set that pad their gear score. So without clearing the Ray, 18k is pretty unrealistic as a free-to-play player in general, unless you're purposely padding your DPS. For what it's worth, here's my current skills as well. I have my level 6 skills on my Bullseye, level 6 skills on Wild Call, level 3 on Focus, and level 1 on Storm Arrow. And instead of spreading everything to tier 3, I just decided to go tier 6 on 2 of the big DPS skills to pump damage. But unfortunately, you get punished for doing that because it lowered your ability score instead of just spreading it out across your tier 3s. Over the course of 3 minutes, which is how long a Volt fight is, I, as a free-to-play, can do something like 75,000 to 80,000 damage, depending on my summon RNG. If I get a bird, my damage go down by a lot. If I get a board, my damage can go up by a lot. Now, there's a second reason why the gear score gatekeeping in this game is so bad, and that is the resource is too easy to come by, even if you didn't play the game. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a bad thing because getting free and easy resource shouldn't be a bad thing, but unfortunately that means that the average of the gear score automatically get increased every single week without you having to do anything. So if you're trying to recruit, like let's say average is 14k this right now, if you want to recruit above average player, you can aim for like 15, maybe like 16, like sure, like people who play the game a little bit, put their effort in. Unfortunately, the reality is that the game automatically gives you gear score every week for free because of the various systems in the game. So let's say last week the player base average was 14. Now this week the player base average automatically get rose to 16 because everyone get resource for free. So if you want to keep your standard to above average player, you have to raise your standard to 17 or 18 even for the previous content, because there's a chance that the easy content people at 16 are actually just average or people who didn't really play the game because you're getting so much resource for free. And this is the unfortunate reality of this game handing out resource as a secondary fact, is that the gatekeeping go up naturally really fast as a result. Obviously, this is combined with the fact that this game features auto battle, so when you recruit someone, how do you know if they're just going to turn on auto battle and not actually do anything, or someone who actually know how to play their class properly and do some real damage and stuff like that. And this make it really bad if you're behind in gear score and you're trying to catch up, because the average get raised every single week automatically by default. You're like, oh, this week people are asking for 18k for bones. Alright, maybe next week I'll get to 18k. But then knowing the fact that everyone just get like 1 to 2,000 gear score for free on the next week from things like for ability to pad your album, from things like your default resources rate, you know that that average is going to raise to like 20k the next week, and you just feels like you're permanently playing catch up. You're like, oh, I'll have 18k by next week. It's okay if I don't do the boss this week, I'll do it next week. But then next week it's gonna get to 20k, and then you know, like, oh, you're back to the same point. You're like, I have to try to catch up to 20k, and you just feels like you're never gonna catch up. You feels like you're never gonna make it there when it keep getting raised every single week. There was this really famous saying in China that is, if you don't pad your gear score, you can't get into Ray. But if you do pad your gear score and then the people with the DPS meter find out, you're gonna get booted out anyway. They call it optimize in China. Like they're like, this guy needs to get optimized. It's hard to say what can be done about it. I know people are always going to default to the answers of, oh, just make your own party and invite your own people. But it's not that easy, especially in a game like this where the fundamental problem is the gear score padding. There is so many ways of padding in this game, and I know that people want to play with people in the same ability score range as them. Like if you're an above average player, you want to play with other above average player. Alright, that's fair. But how do I know if your 18k score legit or your 18k score padded? If your 18k score padded and you're trying to recruit for 18 or 19k score legit, then I feel like that's a different story, right? Unfortunately, at the end of the day, gatekeeping is always going to exist in every game. People always want to play with people who are in the similar or higher level than them, and I think that's normal, that makes sense. The problem is that ability score is not a true reflection of what you're trying to achieve, because it is just a horrible reality of how strong you really are between the padding and the natural inflation per week and stuff like that. I don't know, that's it. By the way, new VTuber debut next Tuesday, so come along. But for things like Heart, Wind, Ice, you don't really only 18k, man.